Today, the 24th of September, in the year 2014, on the People's Debate, we are privileged to host the MMD's National Secretary, Mr. Muhabi Lungu, in the studios as our guest today. Mr. Lungu, good morning and welcome to the debate.
Good morning, my brother, and good morning to all of the listeners. And as always, it's always a pleasure to have a discussion early in the morning.
Thank you so much. To start with, how has it been from the time you assumed the position of National Secretary from of the former ruling party?
Well, it's been interesting, first and foremost, and it has been challenging. It has been stressful. It's been fun. It's been a whole myriad of issues. But I live to the challenge, and I think that I am fully committed to the ideals of our party. And I think that many members of the MMD, both in the National Executive Committee as well as people at the grassroots, are all committed to the ideals of the MMD. And all of us, as a collective, believe that the party stands for ideals for which this country needs. So regardless of the challenges that there have been, we are all resolved to overcome. And we are all resolved to be able to provide new hope. That a new hour will come. So it's been challenging, that I have to be honest, but we are all optimistic as to the possibilities and the realities to overcome.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You've talked about challenges. Let's look at the successes that you've scored in the time that you've served as National Secretary. Is there anything that we can talk about?
Well, I think that it is too early for me to begin to speak about successes now. I've been in the office now, I think this is my 5th month. And I really think that it would be inappropriate for me to begin to look at successes. My approach, as has been the approach of the rest of our colleagues in the NEC, has been to try and take a long-term approach in terms of what will be regarded as the successes, not only of the National Secretary, but as a collective of people who have been elected to the NEC and, of course, at all the various levels of the party. I believe that we will be successful. I believe that we will overcome. And in due time, I think that will be clear. For now, I think it's too early for me to say or to give myself a pat on the back.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. Yesterday you had a media briefing where you addressed a number of issues to do with the party, and you announced some major changes. What necessitated these changes?
Well, first of all, maybe let me say what the changes are, so that you know what the scope of those changes are.
Yes.
One, the entire executive committee of the Copper Belt was dissolved, and an interim committee of about 5 people were appointed. And it is our hope that within the week or the coming week we will be able to consolidate the interim committee so that we can begin a real reorganization of the Copper Belt province from the district to the constituency, and then prepare for a provincial conference to elect the leaders. As we've always been saying, that the MMD is the most democratic party in this country, and we do not by acclamation pick or appoint. If there are any appointments, it's always just on a temporal basis until we get the people themselves to decide who should be their leaders. So that has been done, and we thought that it was very important that this is done, particularly on the Copper Belt, because it's such a heart in terms of setting the direction and the agenda for this country. What we've also done is we have asked the Northwestern Province Western Province to fill in all the vacancies that are there at the provincial level. There are a number, and also prepare for a provincial conference to be held within the first quarter of next year, which is by March of next year. Yes. In Western Province, we have also dissolved Kaoma, Lukulu, and the Mangango seats. And beyond that, we've dissolved district executive committees in Kabwe, Kapiri, in Chiwombo, then in Kawambwa, in Vubwi, and a number of other places where we have dissolved. In some cases, we have appointed interim committees. In others, we've asked the Provincial Executive Committee to appoint people quickly who will act, and then we'll be able to identify and schedule times for elections. So these are some of the changes to the structure that we have made. Beyond that, we've also expedited the process of disciplining erring officials. That is, for example, our MP in Honorable Limata in Western Province. There have been a lot of concern that she has been intransigent and behaving as a saboteur. And there has been some delay in ensuring that we expedite this matter. And we have written to the province to ensure that they are going to expedite it, and if they don't, I myself will then immediately take disciplinary charges myself. Even if we do expel her and we have to go to an elections, I think that loyalty to the party is important. I have also suspended with immediate effect the Vice Chairman for Kabwe, for Central Province, Mr. Kangwa, and asked him to show cause why he should not be expelled from the party. Then there are a number of other issues to do with councillors and so on. Now, all of these issues are really intended to start a process of re-energizing our party. And this was an instruction to me as National Secretary given by the President, resulting from our loss in Mangango, and the 21 by-elections that we participated during that same time on the 19th of August. Yes. And I think that the President felt, as we all feel, that we can no longer continue to externalize the problems of the party. Not that we have been in the past, but I think that we have been more keen to try and balance the argument between what the internal issues may be as opposed to what the external issues may be. But I think that the President felt that we need to take a serious look at ourselves and begin the process of redoing the party from scratch. And in this regard, we will be dissolving some provinces, some districts, some constituencies, and asking that we identify new individuals who want to come to the party, take up leadership positions, and eventually have elections in all the respective structures of the party. So this is really the beginning, and it will obviously all culminate to towards our constitutionally provided for convention when it is due.
Okay, so thank you so much. So these dissolutions being made, changes being made in the party are all meant to help the MMD come back even more strong?
Of course, yes. They are all intended to ensure that let me reiterate again what many people have said before, and including those people in the leadership. Well, the MMD was in power for 20 years, from 1991 to 2011. Yes. And it has gone through a lot of transformation in that 20 years. And I think it's safe to say that when a political party is in government for that period of time, that there is a great deal of complacency that develops within the party structures. And also what you find is that, especially in the tail end, especially in the last 5 years, 10 years and so on, you found that a lot of other people who did not believe in the ideals of MMD came and jumped on the bandwagon because they felt that this was a party in government and that we needed to be part of it because we needed to eat, and not because they believed in its natural goodness or anything of the sort. So when you are in that position, you do have a mixture of people who are committed and people who are not committed. And also you begin to survive as a political party in a manner in which you are assisted because you are in government. And you develop a mentality of connectivity to the government. So in a sense you become like a party which is entitled because you are in government. Now when you lose office and all the privileges that go around with your party being in government are also lost, that you find that a lot of people are unable to cope, and a lot of people are able to survive, and then people begin to drift away, and there are a lot of other difficulties that arise, and you go through this period of adjustment, and that is what we are doing. And I believe, as is the belief of the majority of people in the NEC, including the President, is that we have not been able to do the things that were supposed to have been done immediately the party lost office. We did not do a very thorough introspection of what the state of the party is, and I think every one of us were in this mode in which we were believing that things are still all right, and that we could overcome. But we've come to the realization that no matter what the external factors is, and they are external factors. For example, to lose a by-election does not mean that the party is necessarily weak. Because if the opposition, the PF, wins a seat in Vumbi, I mean, they have so much greater advantage, and the playing field is not equal. But a good soldier, a good fighter, will be able to determine what the weaknesses of the opponent is, and also what the weaknesses that you have. And even if the opponent is stronger because the playing field is not level, a good tactical person will adjust their own strategies to ensure that they counterbalance whatever those advantages may be. And basically that is what we are doing. So rather than to complain that the government in power are using underhand methods by using government resources, that they ensure that the elections are not held after 1 year after you nullify a seat so you could bring projects to there and so on, that they use a lot of resources and money donations and so on, reason for which those seats were nullified. Rather than us amplify those issues, which are also true, we have decided that let us see how we can counter. And we believe that if a structure are operating at 100%, we will be able to expose those issues. As opposed to if our structures are operating at say 50% or even at 20%, then even though there is valid complaints, people will say, give us the evidence, and you may not be able to provide it. So we have turned this situation around in hope that we can then begin to look to the future, towards 2016, and take a longer-term approach so that we are not disturbed by every by-election that comes.
From what you've just said, I think to many listeners out there, it seems the MMD is still alive. But really, is the former ruling party dead as suggested by former party spokesperson, Madam Doris Leah? Or is the party just suffering from post-election defeat as suggested by Mr. Kamingampande?
Yes, I think that the suggestion by Honorable Kamingampande is a correct position. That and this is a position which has been reiterated so many times by so many of us in the party, that this was foreseen that we would go through a post-election defeat process, and all political parties go through those. Let us tackle the issue of a party being dead. Okay. Yes. First of all, I would like someone to educate me what it means for a political party to be dead. I mean, how do you define the death of a political party? In life, we know that if a person is dead, he's dead. He's not breathing. He's maybe or she is in a mortuary, and sooner or later, within a specified period of time, someone is going to be buried because they are not functional. The blood is not moving. Now, we have a situation currently where the MMD has got 38 members in Parliament. Yes, it is a reduction from the 55 members that we had in 2011, but I think we all understand what has transpired over the last 3 years. You cannot categorize a political party that has got 38 functional members in Parliament and are debating on a daily basis as being dead. That is one. Secondly, the MMD, according to its constitution, has got 10 provinces. It has got more than 78 districts, and we are also making provisions in the new districts that have been created in the last 3 years. It has 66 members of the National Executive Committee. We have about 58 of them are in place, and we have got constituencies, and in the majority of these constituencies, districts, and provincial executive committees, the party is there, in the majority of them. Yes, there are some places where we have some very serious challenges, and hence some of the dissolutions in the ones that we have announced. There are second categories where people are there but maybe are not sure exactly how to behave and have not taken the post-electoral defeat very well. And of course there are some provinces and districts which are very vibrant. Now, if you were to say to me that what is the state of the party, yes, in relation to whether one is dead or alive, I would say we are obviously not at 100% functionality in terms of where I would like the party to be, in terms of where the President and the National Executive Committee would like the party to be. But we are definitely not in a critical condition. We are definitely not in ICU. We are definitely not in a state where we are bedridden. We are definitely not in a state where, given an opportunity to address a situation, we cannot be able to address it. We are not at 100%. As to where we are in this pendulum, whether we are at 50% or 60%, I think that you can leave that to the respective people to decide. But whatever the case is, we do know that we lost an election in 2011, and that in itself is an indicator that you are not at 100%. We also do know that there are some issues which the party has to deal with, and we have been dealing with. We also do know that there's an election in 24 months. And so we have, by implication, have to be responsible enough and reasonable enough to begin to make the necessary adjustments that are required. Hence, this process that we have started. But to say we are dead, I think that is. I don't think anyone from a dead party will be here speaking. I mean, I do dare say that even political parties that don't have any MPs, if there are political parties that don't have any councillors, if you are going to say the MMD is dead, then no other political party that doesn't have a member of parliament, doesn't have councillors. We've got hundreds of councillors, and a functionality. Then it means that the only party that is alive, you are saying, is the PF. But is that true? Which is not true. So I think that we should try and avoid political rhetoric. Yes, indeed, the party is not at 100%, but there are so many very committed members of the MMD who are prepared to take this party to the next level.
Thank you so much. Now, you participated in the last by-elections and only managed to retain the Kasenengwa seat. How are the other members of the party taking this?
Well, obviously, whenever you go into a context, you do expect that if the necessary things are put in place, that you will do well. And obviously, if you come out at the end of the day, not having done as well as you expected, then you have to relook at yourself. So I cannot say that we are happy, given the fact that we only managed to retain one seat out of the 4 which were ours. But we did put up a brave fight. We did garnish whatever resources we could in order to assist. And I think that there are a lot of factors that you have to consider. But I think the important thing is the fact that the party has made an acknowledgement that we need to begin to restructure. And I think to me that is the most overwhelming thing. We are disappointed, and that has been expressed by so many people. But yesterday at the press conference, I was giving an analogy of a couple that goes to the altar to get married. And one of the questions or one of the declarations one makes at an altar is, I do and I will be in this relationship in bad times and good times, in sickness and in health, and anything in between. And for genuine members of a political party, we cannot have all of our constituent body feelings operate on the basis of the ups and downs of by-elections, because we know that, first of all, by-elections are not a good barometer of what the party will perform in a general and presidential election. They are a very poor barometer. When we said this earlier on as MMD, our colleagues in the UPND said no, they are a very good barometer of elections. Now that there were 5 by-elections and also our colleagues only got 1, I heard President HH on, I think it may have been on Pan-African Radio, no, it was on Joy FM, in which he was saying no, by-elections are not a good barometer. And it is true. I mean, this is not because you have not performed well. There are so many examples in this country where even we as MMD were in government would win 5 seats, maybe a year before the elections, and lose 3 of those in the general elections, because the parameters are not the same. The voter turnout is not the same. The issues are not the same. The people on the ballot are different. But they are a good indicator to give you a diagnostic problem, a diagnosis to say that either the problem is this or that, so that you are able to adjust. So, yes, we are disappointed. Are we downcast? Not completely. Are we going to be paralyzed? Not completely. What they have been able to do is to put us in a mode where we are rejuvenating our structures and going on overdrive in order to address the situation. Yeah.
With the foregoing really in the previous by-elections, do you still have hope as MMD of bouncing back to power?
No, of course we do. I mean, that is categorically we do. That there is every hope to bounce back. Although, I must say that from an ideological point of view and from an ideal point of view, as a political party, I think that there is an enormous amount of emphasis in this country that is being put on just getting into office. There are other responsibilities that a political party has in terms of its existence in the political realm. And given the fact that at this particular time, our responsibility was to provide checks and balances to the current government, we have been able to provide those checks and balances to the government. We have not been able to do them to the fullest extent because the current government has created a situation where all the political parties are preoccupied with the elections and by-elections and everything else except governance, which we have condemned that this is not a good thing to do. You cannot have a situation where you hold 23 by-elections within 3 years and there are another 19 pending. And all of these are as a result of petitions by the government that promise that they would bring more food to your table, that they would bring you employment, that they will be able to bring a constitution, that they will be able to do all these fantastic things. And they have tried everything possible to try and divert public attention, political attention, to the issue of parties being engaged in electoral contests, which is not a very good thing. It may be a clever strategy for them, but it is only a clever strategy for those who want to retain power. It is not a clever strategy for those who want to govern. And one wants to believe that the people of Zambia elected the PF to govern, to improve their conditions of welfare, none of which they have been able to do in the last 3 years. So they have preoccupied us with discussing whether MMD is dead or not. They've preoccupied us with discussing whether MMD should be fighting UPND. They've preoccupied us with discussing whether the president is a dynamic and creative figure or not, and they have not preoccupied us with providing the solutions that are required to provide jobs for the millions of youth that voted for them, to provide tax compliance for them, so many companies which are not being compliant, to provide fertilizer for so many farmers who want that fertilizer to be delivered on time. My mother is a small-scale farmer, and she gave her produce to FRA more than maybe 2 months ago, and she has not been paid. And this is just a simple example of my mother. And my mother is not entirely a person who is not well-to-do. But there are so many thousands of farmers, millions of farmers throughout the country who have sold their commodities to the FRA and have not been paid. Yet the government ministers go on TV every day to tell us that everyone has been paid. Oh, there are so many people who are still waiting for inputs, and this is September, end of September, and that has not been done.
We are already in the farming season.
We are already in the farming season. So all of those issues are not being discussed as thoroughly as they should be being discussed by we in the opposition and all of our colleagues, simply because we've all been put on our defense to begin to talk about us. So the first thing I want to say is that, yes, I don't want to evade the question of whether we can win or not. I believe that we can. I'm just saying that everything has been tilted towards electoral contests rather than in terms of the here and now. So everyone is focusing to the future. And in part, I believe that is because Zambians have already become tired of the PF and are looking forward to changing them. The decision of the people will be the people's, and I think that none of us can clearly say how the people will decide when they go into that ballot paper. But they will look at the record of the PF and compare it to the record of the MMD. And I'm quite sure that at the end of the day, they will be able to arrive at the conclusion that the MMD had better policies, executed them better, and were a lot more honest to the people than the current crop of leaders.
So do you say, well, people still think of changing government, MMD still stands out as an option?
I think that it does. I think those people who are hoping that it will not be an option are wishful thinking. We believe, obviously, that there are a number of milestones that we have to pass as a political party. That we believe. But we believe we will pass those milestones. And we believe that when matters come to the head, every voter in 2016 who is going to line up to vote is going to make a decision and a choice on the basis of which group of people they believe are serious about governance and are able to provide the best form of government. And we proved, yes, there were a lot of criticisms about what we were able to do, and some of the criticisms were correct, given the fact that we had stayed in power for 20 years with 3 different presidents. Sometimes you need to be shaken up a little bit. And I think that we have been shaken up. But I think that the expectations of the Zambian people of the PF, as given by the PF, were such that they thought that there would be tremendous change from the governance record of the MMD in terms of moving forward. What they have discovered is that there has been tremendous change in terms of moving backwards, and that the gains that the MMD were able to bring forward are being lost. And I think that is a useful conclusion that most people would make. So when the time comes, I believe people will evaluate all of the political parties critically, and I think that most people will make their decision on the basis of what makes the greatest of sense in terms of taking this country forward.
Now, Mr. Lungu, are you content being part or a member of the former ruling party? Really, what is keeping you in the MMD? Some of your critics are of the view that you lack sound and timely political judgment. When everyone is moving away from the MMD, you're still stuck in the movement for multi-party democracy.
Well, first of all, let me correct you that it's not everyone that is moving away from the MMD. I think you've just been asking me about whether the party is dead or not, and some people have left, and we have explained, and I think we've all adequately explained why some people have left. Okay, now let me just propose this. If people feel, I should put it in a different way, because I always get this question, okay, which I find it very strange. Okay, if people feel that the MMD is not the solution, where do they want me to go? I mean, just think about it. Now, of course, people will say to me, go to the PF, okay? And I would say to them, okay, why do you want me to go to the PF? And the reasons, some of them have said this to me, and the reasons some of them say to go to the PF, because they are in government that you'll be eating, okay? You have a job, they'll give you a job, and so on. So the issue does not become whether the PF are doing well, whether they are developing the country. The issue becomes about you, Muhabi Lungu, being a part of those people who are eating, okay, and seem to be doing well. So it's a personal choice about belonging to the winning side. Now, I have said to them that we in 1991 asked that we demanded, in fact, and we started to march, that we needed a plural system of government in which there are a multiplicity of parties that knock each other so that they can together find the best solutions for promoting the welfare of the majority of Zambians. If you have all the good guys in a party that is in government, as we did in the MMD, we had the majority of people, and we still do have the majority of them. When a political party that managed to make enough noise about them doing things are put in government, you find that the majority of the MPs are not competent. You find that the majority of people there do not know what to do. You find that the majority of people there are at sea about what they need to do in order to improve the people's lives. Because everyone had created the impression that if you want to eat, go to the MMD. And so everyone came and joined the MMD. Those people who had good intent, those people who had bad intent, but many of them with the intent of eating. And that's what I've been saying, that it's not the right thing to do. I cannot join the patriotic front because you're in government simply because I want to eat. It is morally wrong. And then I have no business in being in politics if my business is to just eat. And that is the view of the majority of the members that are in MMD today. We have a responsibility to this country, and that responsibility goes beyond our own desire to eat. So that is the reason why people like myself and many others within the MMD cannot go to the PF. It's a moral question. I don't agree with what the PF stand for. I don't even know what the PF stand for, because even themselves as members of cabinet do not appear to know what they stand for. If you hear a statement being issued by Vice President Guy Scott on the Constitution, for example, it is a different statement that was issued from the acting president, Mr. Lungu. And he even said it politely yesterday, that advising the PF members to be in conformity. Because even at the senior level, they don't seem to know what they believe in. I don't know whether the PF believe in free market, or whether they believe in socialism, whether they they're just such in myself, a confusing policy orientation that I would find difficult to belong in that group of individuals. So that is one. Then the other thing you might say to me is that, okay, why don't you go to the UPND? Others have told me, I've had a lot of members of the UPND come to me and said, you should come and join. And even on the social network, whenever I have written an article, or a member of the MMD, whether it is Howard Kunda, whether it is Mbula Kulima, any member who is seen to be dynamic within our political party does something or says something that they agree, they said, why don't you come and join us in the UPND? And we have consistently stated that, one, we do not believe that a political party should be instituted on the basis of an individual, which many of us in the MMD who are legitimate about this believe that our colleagues in the UPND have identified an individual, and they have put that individual on a pedestal, and they have said the rest of you must follow that individual because he was a successful businessman, because he's got loads of money, and because of other conditions, therefore let us follow them. And many of us in the MMD find that offensive. I find it offensive. I am not going to join a political party for which there is a messiah. And we have said that plenty of time. I have got no issues with Mr. Hakainde. He's probably a very nice guy. When we meet, we discuss, we chat. But it is not about him. It is about the conceptualization of what a political party believes. I am not in the MMD because of Dr. Nimas Mumba. I respect him. I believe that he's got good leadership qualities. But I'm not in the MMD because of Dr. Mumba. And if Dr. Mumba were not to be there in the MMD, I would still be a member of the MMD. Because it is not the personification of Dr. Mumba that makes me and the majority of other members in the MMD stay in the MMD. And that is the reason Dr. Mumba is now our fourth president. And people have stayed, and people will continue to be in the MMD. And I am in the MMD because it believes, one, in democracy. Two, it believes in the rule of law. Three, it believes in a particular political orientation. And all of these are important to me. Just like I'm a member of the United Church of Zambia. Why am I a member of the United Church of Zambia? Because I believe in the creed of the United Church of Zambia and in all its settings. I have a wife, and I'm very close with my wife. My wife is very staunch Catholic. Okay? I am not a member of the Catholic Church. Is it because I dislike the Catholic Church? No, it is not. Because there are certain ideological issues about the Catholic Church which I do not adhere to. And you can't force me to go to join you can try and convince me. But I have. And I have friends and wives and so on who are members of the Catholic Church. So, what I'm saying is that we should not be in politics because we want personal gain. We should not be in politics because we want to idealize an individual. We should all be in politics because of the values and the beliefs we believe. We believe that this institution is what represents my cause, and that is what you are supposed to be. So it has nothing to do with deciding to be on the wrong side. What about the right thing to do? Are you suggesting to say if a political party looks like it's going to win, let's say in 2016, let us assume that a political party has been formed, and that political party believes that killing people is okay, and that political party believes that raping women is okay, and that political party believes that stealing is okay, and that political party believes that you can lie to people anytime you want, and that even with all those inadequacies, that for some reason they've managed to convince the Zambian people that they should govern, that every one of us should join, regardless of whether I believe that killing people is wrong, that I believe that rape is wrong, that I believe that cheating is wrong. I can't do that. As for me, I have to stand where I believe my values and my conscience tells me to believe. Whether that is a position of loss or not, it really doesn't matter. My responsibility is to try and make my organization better. In poor times and in good times. In sick times and in health. I am going to be part of the collective in the MMD, and we are many of us, to make this party a better thing so that others can begin to rejoin it.
Before we get to other national issues, let's look at some of the challenges that the party is facing. MMD had decided to expel some senior party officials for alleged indiscipline. Have you reversed that decision as a party?
Which senior party members are those you're referring to?
There's some senior party members that were disciplined. I think that was the creed of people like Honorable Dora Silia.
Yes. Now, first of all, we didn't expel them. Honorable Silia, I would like to believe, is still a member of the MMD. Honorable Kayengu is our member and is in Parliament. Honorable Chituo is our member and is in Parliament. We didn't expel them. What we did was that there was a conflict, as you remember. There was a general belief by members of the National Executive Committee that our colleagues went beyond what was acceptable in terms of breaching the party regulations, and that what was done was commensurate in order for them to have their seats, their positions taken away in the National Executive Committee, which was done constitutionally. So it was only their positions that were taken away, and they still remembered, and we said clearly that these members will continue to enjoy full rights and full responsibilities. You cannot claim to have a right if you are not prepared to exercise a responsibility. And so it goes both ways. And for those members who are compliant to the rules and regulations of the party, we said we will treat them as ordinary members of the party with full rights. For example, one of the persons who was stripped of his position in the National Executive Committee was Honorable Akimulus. And when his seat was declared that he could stand, the first thing he did, Honorable Akimulus, was drive to the Secretariat, and he found me there, he found the President there. Nobody chased him, we all embraced him as our member. And he held a press conference at the Secretariat to say that I will stand, and no one even raised any questions about it. And when it was time to assist him in the electoral contest, the party did what it could to assist. Perhaps we did not assist him to the extent that all of us would have liked to have. Perhaps we didn't assist him to the extent that he may have liked us to have. But we did assist him. And I know that, for example, the President went to Solwezi to help him campaign. I was in Solwezi to help the campaign. And other people went to Solwezi, and we also took notation from him as to who he wanted to help him and who he didn't want to help in the constituency. That is regardless of what conflicts that there may have been. And that is what a democratic party does. We didn't look back to say, no, we had a grievancy with Honorable Akimulus, therefore we are not going to try and help him win the seat. We tried to do everything possible. That is the same with all the other members. In this particular case, let me take opportunity to raise the issue of Honorable Silia, because I think you particularly mentioned her. One of the decisions that I made yesterday was that we have opened up the application process of candidates in Mlowezi, in Malambo, and in Petauke, where we are expecting that hopefully that a decision will be reached soon as to whether our candidates will stand or not. We believe that they will be allowed to stand, but we have decided to open it up partly because it has taken very long. It's been a year now, and so many dynamics have come into play. And one of the dynamics, in as far as, say, Petauke is concerned, as you have rightly put it, that Honorable Silia was on this show saying that, using the same word you use, that the MMD is dead. Now, the question you ask, if a member says the MMD is dead, you say to her, well, this is going to be a candidate in our election. Will she stand on our ticket? And you're not sure. We are not really on talking terms anymore. I have tried my bit. I think that I will be pushing it to say that we are on the best of talking terms. And there are others who may try to talk to her. And we are not certain from what information she's communicating to us as to whether she wants to stand on the MMD ticket or not. So rather than us take a decision to say, you're not our member, we don't want you to stand, we have taken a decision collectively of all the 3 constituencies to say, please let us reopen it, and those who are interested to stand on our ticket can apply. And if she puts in her application and says she's still interested, because even though she thinks that there are some difficulties in the party, she is prepared to take collective responsibility and make things better, then none of us would have those difficulties. But we cannot be so irresponsible as a political party as to assume that everything is okay, and then on the day of filing of nomination, somebody says, I'm a member of the GPP, or I'm standing on the PF, or I'm standing as an independent. That would be irresponsible on our part. And I think that that is one of the reasons that we have taken this decision, although there are many other reasons that are not just unique to Petauke. But I think that I thought I needed to clarify that. So the fact that people were disciplined does not mean that they do not have full rights and responsibility to belong to our political party.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Now let's get to issues to do with the governance of this country. Of course, to which we saw ZRA recently rescinded its decision to amend VAT Rule number 18, which seeks to pay mining companies VAT refunds.
Yeah.
What's your analysis of this?
Well, my analysis for that is that it's unfortunate that this is a debate that has prolonged as long as it has. I mean, VAT is value-added tax. It's like an excise tax. And there's input VAT, there is output VAT, and depending on whether someone is using a commodity for exports and so on, you claim the tax that you have paid the government, which you use in your productive places for the government to give you back. Okay? So it is, you are claiming something that, in a sense, is yours. Now, the particular rule, the Rule 18, there is a dispute by the mining companies and some of the other companies that pay that they are supposed to claim the money which is due to them in accordance to that rule. The argument that was being used was that no, because they are not compliant in other taxes of the mining sector, we should say perhaps punish him by saying we will not refund you this money unless you can prove that either you exported and so on. And there are some arguments going on between the mining, the chambers of mine. There's some arguments with the Economic Association of Zambia and so on, which is all right to have those sorts of debates. The issue is that this issue has now been politicized, so that even people who do not understand the complexities of how this particular tax operates have also gotten involved in the debate. And I think that it has been put in a manner in which it has been used to try and, in a sense, further a political struggle that is going on in the PF regarding what transpired with the Honorable Winter Kavimba, with the quarrels which is perceived to be with the Honorable Chikwanda, so that you saw that the issue ceased to become the VAT rule. It became whether Chikwanda was implementing to benefit himself or not. That is what we were being told. Then you had statements from the mining houses saying, no, but this is our man. So you have all this kind of confusion, so that the essence of the argument on VAT is lost, which is a very sad thing. From an economic perspective, you have taken an economic tool to try and use to batter individuals on a political level, and that is the unfortunate part of it. And the issue you raise, because this is a governance program, the issue you raise is about governance. Are we being governed properly by the people who are in authority? Are we being governed properly by people who are in power? Are they using the right instruments to educate people, to inform them, and to ensure that they are creating a platform by which business is able to generate jobs for the majority of people and generate a decent level of living? Or is everything about intrigue and power play and power and who seems to have the leverage in the office? Now that is unfortunate. Today in the newspapers, we know that yesterday I think the Post newspapers was raided by ZRA. Yes. There is an attempt by the newspaper to defend themselves, and they've even written a verbatim discussion between what is said to have transpired in Honorable Chikwanda's House about what he said about tax and not. Now, I know that in normal circumstances, my discussing this issue because they went and filed an injunction would be considered contempt. But our colleagues begin to believe that they are the only one who are immune to contempt. So they can treat a verbatim discussion of a tape which they submitted to court, and that's not contempt. But anybody else who discusses is contempt. But the point I'm making is this, that there is these issues to do with taxes and about tax compliance and about the business houses paying more money to the treasurer, which was one of the key promises which the PF made as a fundamental plank as to the reasons why they should be elected in government. You recall that? And yet they have not been able to give a clear policy direction in terms of what their tax policy is. They have not been. In all the previous government, they've either retained our tax structure as it was, they've made minor adjustments to it, whether it was to the mineral royalties tax and so on. But they had made a fundamental statement that they, as far as they were concerned, that the percentage of the GDP that will be obtained from collection of revenue that will go into the government will be such that it will make a tremendous transformation to the way you implement fiscal policy, to the way you implement expenditure. Yeah, and 3 years down the line, what we have seen is that it has not been increments in terms of resource mobilization through taxation, which is what they promised, but instead it has been through borrowing. So you borrow on the domestic market and you increase your interest rates and make it difficult for even the businesses which create jobs to borrow, because now the interest rates are higher. You go to the international market and float bonds, and you borrow bonds at 3%, and 2 years later you are paying 8% on that money. And you have now creating a debt sustainability issue. Now they claim that no, because we rebased our economy, the size of our economy is actually larger, therefore as a percentage of the GDP of the country, the size of the economy, because now we've rebased, is okay, so our debt is not an issue. That is not the correct position, because when you get to certain levels of borrowing, and when that amount of borrowing is not used appropriately, then you have a problem. And you begin now to instigate the ZRA or others to try and collect as much revenue from anyone who they can find. So it becomes, the tax issue becomes a broader-based issue to do with politics, immorality, and all sorts of issues. So that has to be put within that context.
Thank you so much. Now let's get still on issues to do with the governance of this country. Finance Minister Alexander Chkwanda is expected to present the national budget next month, 10th October. How different would you like the 2015 budget?
Well, first of all, I think let me say that in all fairness, that this will be the 4th budget that is going to be delivered by the PF. I think that milestone must be acknowledged by everyone who is listening and who is expecting this budget. What this also means is that this is really their last honest budget that they can come up with, because the next budget for 2016 will be an election year budget. Okay, so this is really the last budget that is being presented to try and address whatever failures, inconsistencies, and whatever that they may want to achieve in this last real normal year, in a calendar year, because the other year is an election year, and we know how government behave in an election year. They will do things that are even unreasonable or whatever, and we know that the PF have got a propensity of glossing over issues and exaggerating what they will do. So the first thing is that we have to acknowledge that this is really the last real budget, and in normal times. The second thing is this. Even though this is such a critical budget for the PF as they go in their 4th year, is that it is one of those budgets for me I'm least expectant of, because their last 3 budgets have proved to have been a disappointment, and they have not reached the targets which they set out to reach in all their 3 budgets. If you recall, for example, let us look at GDP growth. In all their 3 budgets, they said that GDP growth target for that year was going to be 7% or above. Okay? That is a macroeconomic indicator. In no year in the last 3 years have the PF reached that target of 7% GDP growth or above. And of course they were clearly saying all above because the main argument they were giving against us in the MMD was that, well, while we were growing the economy by 6.5 and 7%, we as a PF would come and grow it by 10%. That is what they were saying. And I think that everyone can remember. They come into government and then they start saying, no, we'll grow the economy by up to 7%. And they have never reached the target. Our last year of growth was 7.3%. That is how much we grew the economy as MMD in the last year of our governance. Now, there are some people who say, well, you know, GDP growth means nothing as long as it doesn't affect poor people, as long as it doesn't distribute in terms of government expenditure. Let it be known that from an economic point of view, the first thing that comes is economic growth. And I have said this before countless numbers of times. You cannot share anything if you don't have anything to share. And so you have to grow your income first if you have to increase your capacity to share. Okay? Obviously you can say, okay, my income is still 100 kwacha, and with this 100 kwacha, before I was keeping 50 for myself as government, and I was disbursing 50 for the rest of you. Okay? Now what I will do with this same income is that I will keep maybe I will maybe keep only 30 kwacha for myself, and disburse the rest of the 70 kwacha. That is possible if a government is honest, and the government is diligent, and the government is focused. It's very possible. But you have to remember that 20, if you've given yourself 30, it means that you have given up an extra 20. And you have to account of how you are going to do that extra 20, because we are dealing with what you have. Okay, I'm trying to make a comparison in terms of the argument. And that will create dislocations in the way of those people who have lost that 20. And usually in the government, it is those people who have had their wages frozen, like the labor unions. It is those people who had graduated, who wanted to be what? To be recruited. Okay, so that they can now be more teachers, more nurses, and so on. And you have imposed a 2-year wage freeze. You have imposed a 2-year freeze in recruitment because you have decided to forgo. In the event that you are just dealing with the same income you had of 12. So what is always best, if you want to be able to spread the growth, is you say, okay, we will grow our income from 100 kwacha to say 120 kwacha, so that we maintain maybe the proportion of the way we were allocating the resources in a previous day, but the extra income of 20 will now go to the other areas as a beginning. So the first thing is that economic growth is fundamental towards redistributing income if you do not want political instability. Okay? And they have not been growing the economy to the extent that they have said. So, would I believe if Mr. Chikwanda in the budget for 2015 says that we will grow the economy by 7% or above? I will not believe it. And I don't think that he will revise his figures downwards in the 4th year to say we will grow the economy by 6%. I don't think so. I'm yet to look at the green paper to see what figure they have said. So that is on just economic growth. Let us look at the other indicators. Last year, we had a projected deficit of 8% in terms of the amount of money that is required for resource mobilization. Okay? And that because there was this deficit, the government was going to go to the domestic market to borrow in order to finance certain issues. Okay? What we would be interested in looking is to what extent the government has exceeded that deficit, or to what extent the government has been able to close that deficit in terms of financing. That would be very interesting to see. Now, given the fact that a lot of projects have stalled, one would get the impression that perhaps there is a problem in terms of resource mobilization. Hence explaining some of these issues that ZRA is maybe doing. Because they want to collect as much revenue using any means necessary, and it may be there. Even if they are right, of course they have to collect. But it gives an indicator that there may be a problem to do with the deficit situation. Let us look at the rate of inflation. We left it at, I believe it was 6.5, somewhere there. It has consistently been increasing. And at one point, it hit 8%. I'm not even sure what it is now. I think last month it was 8.2%. I need to be corrected on this figure. But that in itself also means that a major macroeconomic indicator is being compromised. It took us more than 30 years as MMD to bring the inflation rate from 30% to below 10%. Now, people might say, okay, look, you are always talking about this macroeconomic indicator. The inflation rate merely means that the general increments of prices in a country is increasing at a rate which may not be desirable. And for the ordinary person, it means that their cost of living is increasingly becoming harder. So we would like to see what their projection will be in terms of the target for the inflation rate will be, and whether they will have met their other targets. They have not met those targets, because I do know that they wanted to maintain an inflation rate which was below 7%, which was around 6%, and they have not been able to do that. So you have to ask the question, what is wrong with the macroeconomic implementation of this policy? So I can go down step by step looking at all the macroeconomic indicators, and I will stop there for the moment, because people always criticize me that I am too economic but I wanted to say that even these issues people may not want to discuss, they are important to understand, because they do have an impact in terms of the day-to-day living of individuals. The price of tomato, the price of an input of fertilizer, the price of baking for a person who makes bread, the price of a trader, and so on. Let us look at the exchange rate. We would like a situation whether the government gives a concrete reason as to why our exchange rate has been able to move from 4.6 when we left it to 6 now. At one point, remember, it was 6.5. And it is now hovering around 6.1, 6.2, and so on. Now, again, that is another indicator. Some people might say it's not relevant, but the trader to you at Soweto market or at Comesa market will tell you that if they were selling a shoe which they imported at 50 kwacha when the kwacha was 4.6, they're now maybe selling it at double the price, simply because there's been this 30% or 20% increment in the exchange rate. And that exchange rate permeates through the rest of the economy. And it is a significant factor, because in economics, just a unit adjustment to a pricing mechanism can have an enormous impact on the pricing mechanism as a totality. So these issues, even though the ordinary person sometimes may not want to discuss them, it's important that we look at them. But we can step down and go to the nitty-gritties. Yes.
Thank you so much. Now, before we even invite our callers to start calling in and get to ask their questions, what cardinal issues touched you during the official opening of Parliament by President Michael Sata?
Well, the first cardinal issue that touched not only me, but the MMD as a whole, and I think the whole nation, was not what was contained in the speech, but what transpired at the opening of Parliament regarding what clearly appeared to be ill health of the President. Now, we have issued a statement as the MMD since then to suggest that we believe that given what appears to be poor health of the President, that we recommend that the President is given an opportunity to recover, to recuperate. Now, I know that in the Zambian case, it appears to be taboo to discuss these matters. But I think that we have to be brave and bold and not live in denial. Before I came here, one of your reporters was asking me about Ebola. She was saying to me that we understand now there is one case of Ebola in Ndola. Yes. I said to me, I am not aware that this is true, because when I listened to the news yesterday, I think there was a denial that it was actually not Ebola. I think there was dysentery or something like that, and so on. But the point I raised is this, that you can only deal with a situation in any country where there is a crisis if you accept that there is a problem. If you don't accept that there is a problem, then you will not be able to have the correct prescription for that problem. So at the beginning of the show, I was accepting that MMD has got some problems, so that we can find the correct prescription to get it out of that problem. It is the same thing with Ebola. The government has to come out in the open to say whether there is or not. And if there is, what are the steps that are being taken in order to ensure that this thing that doesn't spread? That is what is called not living in denial. At the press conference yesterday which I had, I gave an example of the former president, Dr. Kaunda. In the 1980s, when the issue of HIV/AIDS was just coming to the head, everyone was living in denial. And it took Dr. Kaunda to accept and make a public announcement that his son, Masuzio, had died and succumbed because of this disease. And that acknowledgement made government step up the programs towards HIV/AIDS, to resource the money, to get the communities and the donors. And we were one of the first countries that had all these programs roll out to the extent today that people living with HIV/AIDS are able to live almost normal life. It's a chronic illness now, but they're able to those who live in denial may go the way of an unfortunate situation. So it is very important that a country that wants to uplift the living standards of its people do not live in denial. And one of the issues which we can't live in denial is the health of our president. And we feel sympathy towards him. We feel sympathy towards the First Lady. We feel sympathy towards the PF, and we think that he should be given an opportunity to recuperate. That is the position of the PF. For example, today you have a picture in talking to Mussolini and the other president and so on, and there was no picture of our president. So the question, if our president went to this conference, when was he at the conference? Now, what do you think this question is a question? Because a question which is intended for our country to be able to reflect about the way we handle these matters. So I think we're getting the point. What is the first issue that struck me? And it struck all of us around the world. We hope that we will be able to be given time so that he can recover. And I think that the country should not live in denial. To suggest that now Dr. Miller is not a medical doctor, the rest of us don't have any right to speak, is being unreasonable. And it's being nonsensical, and it's being unfair, and it is speaking for the benefit of people who just want to eat. A serious problem. So that is, I think that I've dealt with that more than I should have. Let us look at the content of the speech itself.
Yes.
First of all, I only read it in a supplement the following day, because the speech in itself was not delivered, which of course raises issues of, even if we take the health issues out, which raises issues to do with governance. The opening up of Parliament, the delivering of a speech is intended to give a program of action of Parliament for that life of Parliament. And the idea is to get everybody engaged in terms of what the proposals will be. Now, if you look at the speech that was laid on the table, because that's what it was laid on the table, you will find that the speech itself is fairly hollow. I read it and I found that it was very hollow. There is an attempt to justify that, for example, we had planned to build 80 schools, we've built 40, and maybe that's whatever. But in terms of policy direction of where it should go, I find it very lacking myself. The statement seems to be unfinished, whether it is on IDC. You know, there was a big debate on IDC and or INDECO that we all got involved in, and in the speech it makes an attempt to say no, maybe there should be some allocations to the IDC to ensure that it's operating and so on. It really doesn't give, It's as if the president is even unsure of how the IDC should operate, so he wants to leave it to the Ministry of Finance or to other people to set the agenda of what the IDC should be. And it is likewise in many of the other areas. There are statements which we've all heard before and do not really give a clear direction of what the policy of the PF will be in the last 2 years. So I think that it was a disappointment, published though it has been, and it is surprising that people say it is fantastic.
Thank you so much. The MMD National Secretary, Mr. Muhabi Lungu, is our guest on the debate today. We take a very short break. After the break, we invite you, our listeners, to call in on 0211-224350.
This is Pan-African Radio on 105.1 FM Lusaka, a public radio station serving the people of the Lusaka area. We seek to create an informed public with a better understanding and appreciation of local, regional and global events, ideas and cultures. We will contribute to the daily lives of the people by providing educational, informational and entertaining programming that develops an appreciation of the arts, humanities and civic responsibility. Our vision is to be the public radio most admired for its staff performance, innovation and integrity. Mission is to inform, entertain and enlighten. Welcome to Pan-African Radio 105.1 FM Lusaka.
Pan-African Radio. Pan-African Radio.
Welcome back. This is the People's Debate, and time to call is now on 0211-224350 if you have any questions on the number of issues that we've discussed with our guest in the studio today, MMD National Secretary, Mr. Muhabi Lungu. 0211-224350. Hello, good morning. We've lost that caller. Call us back and indeed you get air out your views and your questions, of course, to our guest in the studio today. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Wamala.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
If you may kindly speak up, please. 0211-224350 is the number you are calling. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Malambo.
Good morning, sir.
My name is Chanda Chimba.
Mr. Chimba, good to have you on the debate.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mr. Muhabi.
Good morning, Mr. Chimba.
SG, Secretary General. Is it not so, Dr. Malam?
It's National Secretary in the MMD.
Yes. I want to agree with Muhabi where he says the president should be given time to arrest. I agree with him. You see, what we saw in Parliament was disaster. What we saw in Parliament was disaster. We saw what was eaten. The Constitution of the Republic, Dr. Malambo, it's very clear. It says, in the event that the president falls sick, those people who are making the Constitution, they knew we were dealing with human beings. In the event that a person who occupies the position of president falls sick, it could be Lemas Mumba, it could be Akainde, it could be President Sata, like now is the one occupying. If he falls sick, let the medical team be created so that now the government has been refusing for a medical team to be created. That's point number one. Now we saw what happened, that the president is not okay. And when one is talking about the president not being on TV, we are not seeing his pictures. The question is, can he manage? He failed to talk in his own country. Can he manage to talk in Washington? Which president has you guys? It is still the same person. Let the president step down. And this is so selfish by the ministers of patriotic land. Very selfish people that President Sata is working with. Why can you allow your colleague to be in such a condition to go to Parliament? All of us felt bad, including me in the opposition. I felt bad. I felt for President Sata when he was speaking. This is what happened to Muhabi. About Manasa. Manasa we were told to say, let Manasa step down. They were saying Manasa is okay. Until he collapsed and died.
Mr. Chimba.
Yes,
Mr. Chimba, sir, we have very little time. If you may make your point, if you have a question for the guest, yes.
Let the president step down, because Republican president, and we are appealing also to your political party, Muhabi Lungu. Your political leaders, you are cowards. Why can't you allow
Chimbawe, thank you so much. Let's see if we can accommodate other callers. 0211224350. Hello, good morning.
Let me go FICT. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Malambo.
Good morning.
Hello?
Hello, good morning, sir. It's quite noisy where you are. If you may kindly move.
Yeah, that's why I go a distance a bit. Good morning, Muhabi Lungu.
Good morning, sir. I believe that's proud.
Dr. Proud.
Yes, I believe so.
What we can only say to the people who went to America and our Republican president, we want not to see a first lady. Zambia people have told the Republican president to be seen on ZNBC. So we are appealing to ZNBC people such as Maduma, Masuzo Njovu. We don't want a picture of a first lady. Those first lady, he never promised people more money in their pocket. It's our Republican president who is supposed to be military. It is our president who promised people of Massa says, I'm going to build the whole sector local. Right now, there is military suspected Ebola. They are saying we take results in Lusaka. Are you giving me some help?
I'm with you.
Suspected Ebola, which is the Kitchen Center Hospital. They are waiting results from Lusaka. After I said we are going to build so many districts. Why I want not to tell you that laboratory to Muchinga, nearest to Copper Belt. I don't remember Mr. Muhabi.
Very much so.
Yes, if PF is a serious government, they should be taking that laboratory for Ebola to Muchinga, not in Lusaka, which means there is a national development they have found. All this is content of road is the creation of MMD. There's a national plan of the we are going to revamp and then you commit a line, we are revamping Mungu State Service, we are going to open Mungu State. What we are being taught, Mungu State have been taken out of private land in the name of Tanzania. Is it to the right? No. So we will say, PF government, I'm going to be Muhabi Lungu. We are also part of this economy we are trying. Because we don't have Zambia hours. That's why we have told to go to Africa Cup to qualify 2019. Maybe we have to say we don't have any airline. But you got the opportunity as well to bring an airline, to bring a massive back to service, that is state together in town to be reduced. But you know the time to look all those issues, Mr. Muhabi Lungu.
Mr. Proud,
Whatever we can say, Muhabi Lungu, you are talking us from all positions. We are all suffering together. We are people to all the ministers in PS. If you have seen a problem, right now there was no fighting corruption in PS. One person was arrested in the Bingson about to send in his ethical, Zambia money. Right now is the spokesperson of the PS. What clear point says this person has been acquitted or what? How are we going to trust him? You saw this issue to go and say to some newspaper office. Where is the from 2011 until now? That's why you came with your money. Which means the PS is not a serious government. You got the ball, but the money is here in Lusaka. Now today we will settle where I am.
Mr. Proud, thank you so much, sir, for coming through.
It's not here to fight corruption. It's not here to collect any money.
Mr. Proud, thank you so much. You've made your point, and indeed, we all noted you going round and round. Seko's on the same point. Let's pick one more call, then we allow our guests to respond to your calls. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Victor Malambo.
Good morning, sir.
This is Alan Kajiri calling me Vinusa. Good morning, Honorable Muhabi.
Good morning, Mr. Kajiri.
Yeah, what I want to say is that the President of the Republic of Zambia, who happens to be Michael Chirufya Sata, is on record of making fun of George Kundarati. George Kunda is laid lips. The trousers of Mazoka falling. Levy, and so many people. This is a man who made fun of the sick people. But you know, as the Bible says, whatever goes around comes around. You know that same Western as you use. So what we are saying here is that we have got a problem. And this problem needs serious attention. I want to agree with Chikwanda when he says that Mr. Sata is not well. He's an absentee landlord. And I also agree with Simakambu yesterday when he says that what we saw there, everyone is able to see, everyone is able to judge. But for us, if it was HH in that state, for me, I would ask my president, the same president, the other in this, if he was a Republican president ruling right now, I would advise him to say, no, my president, I think I've got a family, and we respect you, you have done your part.
Mr. Kajili,
Yes, Honorable.
we have very little time, sir. If you have a question for all
Let me also, I'm as I conclude my brother Victor Marambo. What you are saying that the PF is a total disaster, and the PF is a failure. And also one thing I want to say, Muhabi Lungu, MMD did your part, my brother. We thank you for 20 years that you wrote us. But let's allow also other parties also to govern. What else do you want to do that you did not do in the 20 years? That's my question. Otherwise, for us, when we form government in 2016, Muhabi Lungu are going to employ you. You are going to be a spokesman, government minister for information, or we are going to take you in the car to our president was. We are going to employ you even this was intended for solution to Mr. Uraki Marusa. We are going to employ all those people who are going colony, We are going to embrace you. We are going to run a government of inclusive government, not a government of PF which is full of nepotism and tribalism. There is tribalistic clique in the PF. Thank you.
Mr. Lungu, we've picked 3 calls so far. Let's see if we can respond.
To some of them, yeah. I think let me start from backwards,
Yes.
From the last caller, Mr. Kajili.
Yes.
Because I think what he raised was different from the others. And he says that the MMD was in power for 20 years. What other things that can we do? So it's time for other people to govern. Now, first of all, I think it's very important for people to acknowledge that when the MMD took office in 1991, that our economy was on its knees. Our GDP per capita was below, it was I think $320. By the time we were leaving, it was over 1,000. When we took over government in 1991 as MMD, we had a situation where this economy was defined as a lower income country. When we were leaving, it was a middle income country. We had reached that threshold. And all of the things that go on with increasing your per capita income, with increasing your status as an economic as a nation, also increased. So at a place where we had queues for cooking oil, for butter, for soap, for all those things were gone. Okay? We tremendously transformed the nature of the Zambian economy. We created a middle class, an entrepreneurial class, and expanded it beyond the horizons which we found in 1991. So, for people like Mr. Kajili, who I think means well, to suggest that there's nothing further that we can do is not right. When we were leaving, the policy framework which we set, the Vision 2030, the 6th National Development Plan, and some of the wonderful things that we are going to do are still the issues which the PF are grappling with and are not even able to implement as well as we were supposed to have done. For example, they only launched the Kazungula Bridge. There was groundbreaking only, I think 2 weeks ago, was it last week? We have been working on that project ourselves since Manawasa, Rupia Banda, we signed everything, and I believe that we would have been flagging off that thing probably in 2012. We started the Sesheke Kalawo Road, the most expensive road in the country. There are members of parliament that come or of the PF saying, oh, this is a wonderful road and whatever. We started it. They haven't finished it. Okay, it has taken long. Maybe we would have finished it by now. So the capacity of the MMD to identify ideas, to identify projects, and then to execute them was really good in comparison to the PF. By far, much better than the PF. So, if the people of Zambia wants projects to be executed, if the people of Zambia wants their conditions of living to improve, they should vote in a political party which has proved that it can do those things, rather than a political party which came in the promise of bringing wonderful things and have reversed, or rather than trying another political party for which there is no record. Because I know that he is probably talking about our colleagues in the UPND, and while we respect the UPND, in all respects, the fact is that the UPND does not have a record of governance. And the people of Zambia made a mistake in 2011 on the presupposition that there would be this action man with his action group of people that would make tremendous change over and above what the MMD did. And they've lived to regret it. Do the majority of Zambians want to make that same mistake in 2016 by going towards a group of individuals for which they have not tried to govern? I think that people have to be a lot more cautious as they make their decision in 2011, because this is not just about wanting someone who you want to be in a seat or should be traveling or should be in New York and not giving the speech where he's supposed to be. It is about improving the welfare of the country and taking the country from level 1 to level 2 to level 10. And I guarantee you that the MMD has got the greatest manpower, experience to be able to take this country to the next level, beyond any of the political parties that are there. Then the second thing Mr. Kajili said, and I'll be quicker in the other ones, was that they will give me a job if they form government. And I can only assume that he's talking about UPND. I hope that I'm making the correct assumption.
Would you want to work with them?
Yeah, now that is why I thought that I should answer it. Look, the first question you explained to me and you answered me was that one of the criticisms that people gave about me was that I'm always on the wrong side. I was originally a member of the MMD, and I was at the first convention of the MMD. When it formed government, I was one of the very first persons in our group of union leaders at the University of Zambia who was called by President Chilua and offered a job. And because at that time I was not entirely convinced that the direction that that particular cabinet would take, I declined it. Some of my colleagues accepted it. And by the time I came back from my master's degree, I had already made a decision that the direction that the party had taken at that point was not in conformity to what I believed. And I went by choice to a political party which was in the opposition to try and help the government be able to see the other side of the coin in terms of governance. And I think that by the time Mwanawasa came in 2001, I can guarantee you that the policy framework of the MMD had actually shifted from the policy in which the first administration of the MMD had done. Am I saying that everything that the MMD did in the first administration was wrong? Not entirely. I think that President Chilua did a lot of wonderful things. Okay? But because of the urging of the United National Independence Party in terms of the type of policy framework, the MMD were able to change its perspective in terms of economic management because of the opposition. And if my objective was to have a job, I would have gladly accepted the job from President Chilua.
Before you respond to Mr. Chimba and the others, let's see if we can still squeeze in two or so calls.
Okay.
Then you get to respond to them as a bunch. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Muhabi Lungu.
I'm fine.
Thank you. This is a local voice.
Mr. Chinyama, good to have you on the debate.
Thank you very much. And the great everyone listening to me and the Professor Association coming present.
We are very little time, Mr. Chinyama. If under 2 minutes you can make your point ahead.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief as well. First and foremost, we have a big problem. We have a big problem as a country to control things, the way things are moving. And we are not expecting anything much. To the MMD, what I can just say to you that be strong. You know, you would like to have MMD to be so strong opposition so that you can be criticizing us as we are going to lead you the way by 2015. We love MMD. You have got history to make. And for you to say there's a history and MMD is supposed to be trusted. First and foremost, MMD of Rubiabanda, MMD of Manawasa, MMD of Chilua. These are different MMDs, okay? And then Never Smomba has never been a president before. What he was only a vice president for I think a year or so. I think so. Anyone else is there, they have to experience. There's no experience, and there's no experienced through this country before. They all try and error. And when you try, and there are some people who at least we try. So the one who want to come here, like even the president, he wants also to do his best. You cannot judge him before he comes. And that's a lie. Let us love one another here. And let us help each other here. The speech of the president, it was the whole, it was not even welcome because he was struggling even to read the messages. So for me, I'm calling for him to resign so that we can at least do something else. But that's right. He has worked. We have to appreciate what he has done for now. So we need to move forward. We need an energetic person who can take over this leadership so that we can go forward. Otherwise, things are not moving. We are expecting a constitution. There's no roadmap yet. The wage freeze and the employment freeze. A lot of things that again because of the time. So otherwise, for us, let us support. We had the unique MMD and PF now, and we are going to have UPND also. And then thereafter, we see what happens. So we have to change so that we can see what the party can do. I think the UPND is the best for moment. Thank you very much.
We thank you, Mr. Shinyama, for coming through. 0211224350. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Malambo.
Good morning, sir. How are you this morning, please?
Yes, Shifa Brigas on the line. I'm calling you from Kawe. Mr. Muhabi Lungu, good morning.
Yes, Shifa Brigas.
Yeah, Shifa Brigas. How do you always fail to pronounce it?
I am not as talented a follower as you. I apologize.
Shifa Brigas, how is Kawe today?
Kawe is cool.
Let's hear your contribution as Fabrikas in under 2 minutes. Really, we have very little.
In under 2 minutes, what I would want to say is that Mr. Muhabi Lungu, when you read the Bible in the book of Acts, we start with verse 15. This is the time when Paul went to Athens, and Athens is one of the famous cities of the ancient world. It was the acknowledged center of intellect, culture, and religion. It was also the city of the prevailing schools of philosophy, and it was wholly given to idolatry. It was said that there were more gods than men in Athens. Now, it is no difference in the world today. Almost the whole human race is bowing down before idols. Now, the statement that I want to make is that when Paul went to Athens, he found two schools of philosophies there, of which one school of philosophies, it was the Epicureans. That's if you read Acts chapter 17, verse 15, going down there, you find that these Epicureans were materialists and atheists. They believed that the chief aim of existence is pleasure, which we are seeing in PF today, that their chief aim of existence is pleasure. And two, these people are the Epicureans. They are materialists, and they believe that pleasure is the only good and pain the only evil. So this is what we are experiencing today. For the PF, pleasure is the only good for them, and pain the only evil.
Well, Fabrikas, your time is up. Thank you so much. I think we've gotten your point. Mr. Lungu will try to answer to your query.
Yeah, in conclusion, now I'm winding up, sir. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Please, go ahead. Please, wind up.
So their motto is, let us eat and drink it. This is what we are seeing in today's government. Their motto is, let us eat and drink. We go in the government to eat and drink. So let us eat and drink. They are not going to develop this nation. I thank you.
Thank you so much. 0211224350, our very last call. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Malambo. How are you?
Very fine. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm good, my brother. How are you, Mr. Muhabi Lungu?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good.
Your name and where you're calling us from, sir?
This is Brother Chisha within Lusaka.
Brother Chisha, you happen to be our last caller due to time in about 2 minutes, if you may.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'll try by all means to be brief.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Muhabi Lungu, MMD, the way it's going as of now, I think it's very well linked. It was just last Wednesday, is it Thursday, when one of your members was on one of the radio stations in the city, where he was saying, he has come up with a pressure group where they want to remove Nebas Mumba as the president. What is your take? And the number two, what makes you to adopt Mulusa? Because Mulusa, he was in the record of in denouncing your president, denouncing the party. But when he came to ask for adoption, you adopted him in Soweto Central. What makes you to adopt such a people? And maybe finally, I've heard you this morning saying these odd members, you don't care if they can go and join these other political parties. What makes you start to say that? Are you not saying the thing which goes like politics is about numbers? What is your take again on that one? And finally, in this coming by-elections, are you ready to adopt these former members of parliament like Doris Leah and the other former members of parliament? Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Brother Chisha, for coming through. You happen to be our last caller there. Due to time, Mr. Lungu.
Yeah, Brother Chisha fired a number of successive questions. Yes. Like Brother Chisha. First of all, let me respond. One, we in the MMD would like everybody to stay. And there is no such thing as a preference for new members as against old members. Some of our most committed members are older members, okay? And some of our not so committed members are newer members. But what we are saying is that we believe that people should belong to the MMD because that is what they believe in. Because the ideals of the party is what they believe in. Not because they think that it is there for the eating, as Fibreglass is talking about the Epicureans and so on. This is not about eating. You belong to an organization because you want to make it better, you believe in its ideals, and we would like everybody to stay. But one thing we will not accept is people to hold us hostage because they don't want to work and promote the welfare of the party. If you are holding a position and you are not doing anything to promote the welfare of the party, it's better that you step aside and let somebody else step in so that they can promote the welfare of the party. Because genuinely you may be tired. And that is all we are saying. So we are not chasing anybody. We like everybody to come. But please come with a view of making things better and not being destructive to the process. If you want to be destructive, move aside. That is what we're saying. Why adopt Lucky Mulusa? I think that, look, Lucky Mulusa was expressing his views regarding not only the president, but regarding the state of the party in general. And we in the MMD are democratic enough that just because someone has given a different opinion than yours, that then he becomes a mortal enemy. That we cannot do, because that is not what our party believes. They were disciplined for a particular case which they were charged, which we felt was putting the party in a situation which was not desirable. And that did not include that they could not be considered for a member of parliament. The decision to adopt Lucky Mulusa, in as much as it is announced by the secretariat or the president, whoever, is a decision which is made at the local level. So the people in Solwezi felt that he was their best candidate. And they made that decision, and we validated it. And of course, to even go further, okay, let us assume that he had said the most nastiest thing about Dr. Mumba. Dr. Mumba is a pastor. And one of the things that he teaches on the pulpit every Sunday is to teach the words of Jesus Christ, which says, forgive. And this is not something that has been started by Dr. Mumba. Even Kaunda, you remember one of his favorite phrases was, revenge is not yours. Okay? It is God's. So we are to receive, actually, ululations for doing what we have done. Are we going to adopt any of the other members that are still standing? Yes, we are very welcome to do that. If in Petauke, for example, because I know this is targeted at Petauke, if in Petauke, Honorable Syria applies, and if it is the wish of the constituency and the districts and the province that we should adopt, I don't think that Dr. Mumba, myself, or any members of the NEC will say no, simply because we had some disagreement, we shouldn't adopt her. Or we shouldn't adopt her. We would never say such a thing. There was one of our members who was on the program saying that we should remove Dr. Mumba. Again, it's the same thing. There are thousands of members of the MMD. Not everyone is going to like Dr. Mumba. And not everyone is going to hate Dr. Mumba. And that was the same for President Rupia Banda. Not everyone loved him and not everyone hated him. That's the same for Dr. Chilula and Dr. Manawasa. We are a political party that believes in an electoral process. It believes in constitutional provisions. Currently, we do have a president in place who we all must respect and help to succeed the party. There will be a time when Dr. Mumba will not be the president of the MMD. That I can guarantee you. Because that is the nature of the MMD. No one is one yaya in the party. And we have to allow the due process and course of our constitution to take its rightful place. For now we have a president, and my responsibility is to help him succeed. And I should hope that every member of the NEC, every member of the province, every member of the district should be to help Dr. Mumba succeed. Not because we want Dr. Mumba to succeed, but because we want the ideals of the party to be promoted. There will become a time when he will be evaluated by all of us in the party. And he knows that, and he can't run away from it. Why should we break our rules simply because some individual who thinks that he has not been given some money because he asked for it has decided that or is being paid by somebody else? Any person who will be, if I was president of the MMD, I would like to be supported. Okay? If whoever that candidate, that one was complaining, was the head of an organization, they would like to be supported. Not at every turn that you go through a little difficulty, then you start shouting, no, we must change. That's not how you will run an organization. You don't run it like that. So I think that I've answered all of them.
Answered all of them indeed. Mr. Shinyama, who said the MMD. You spoke of experience, and Mr. Shinyama says there's experience as well in the MMD.
No, but that is not true. Look, our national executive is composed of people who are ministers of finance, like Dr. Msokotwane. There are people like Honorable Mutati, who were commerce. There are people like Dr. Mumba himself, who was former vice president. He may not have been president, but he was a former vice president. He was a vice president, he was an ambassador, and so on. There is Ambassador Msenge, who was a long-serving diplomat. There is Faustina Shinyango, who was a member of, and an educator, okay? And we can go through a whole chain of the talent that is in the MMD, which, when it is given power, will not begin from scratch and start wiring as to what is to be done and what is not to be done. That is what I meant. And that is because the MMD is a collective. It is not based on some messianic figure who we have ordained as the alpha and the omega. I always say this, by the way, not because I do, as I've said, I respect every individual, and I think that Elias Chipimo is a great guy. I think that HH is a great guy. I think that Neves Mumba is a great guy. I think that Dr. Fred Mutesa is a great guy. He was my head of department. But none of these are by themselves the solution to the problem of Zambia. Just like President Sata, who everybody thought was the solution to the evil of this country, has turned out to be a disaster. So all of those who want us to believe that there is some Messiah who is going to come and save us should just wait for the second coming of Christ, not for the second coming of any of us. What the rest of us can do is really be able to have collective responsibility and have a good leader who listens to others and does not think that he is the end and beginning of anybody. None of us are. So I think that it's very important that Mr. Shinyama realizes that the MMD does have experience. You can't take that away from it. We have a track record, and people don't want any more experiments. Let me conclude. There is someone who had brought about Mulungushi Textiles and NCZ and all those other things. Yeah, I think it was proud
to say those promises were made.
Yeah, those promises were made, and you know, in regard to NCZ, in regard to Kafua Textiles, if you remember when that promise was made, it was made in an election in Chama. There was a by-election in Chama where the president clearly said that NCZ will be open by the end of the year, and that I think was in 2012. He meant December 2012. We are now heading towards December 2014, 2 years later, and Kafua Textiles is nowhere near open. And that gives you the level of, I don't know whether it is a lack of competence, whether it is just absolute deceit, whether it is unseriousness, but this whole issue of Mulungushi textile is emblematic of every other issue that the PF has been involved in the last 3 years, and that is they find it very easy to promise and very, very difficult to fulfill. That is the you know.
Mr. Lungu would like to thank you so much for making an appearance on the People's Debate.
I'm very grateful, very thankful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our guest on the People's Debate for today has been the MMD's National Secretary, Honorable Muhabi Lungu.